We are caretaking a 9-acre property in the southwest of Australia and have had great success in using pigs on a rotation model to destroy introduced weeds, develop the foundation of a great grazing pasture, and make our property fire safe in just a year. When we first arrived, the block was incredibly overgrown with wild oats and Guildford grass, which, combined with unmanaged eucalyptus, was a major fire hazard. We were careful to buy our 5 initial pigs from a property where electric fences were already used, as this saved a training step. By putting the pigs on a fast initial rotation, we were able to eliminate that dangerous understory near the buildings. The next step was to establish a perimeter fence, which I built from medium tensile wire and electrified. From then, it has been a process of moving our pigs into each area we want transformed, containing them with portable electric fencing, and using them as heavy impact to renovate our pasture. We want to show our results so far and look at the system we're using up to this point in our experiments. Well, the accepted wisdom is you can't put pigs in paddocks because they'll destroy it. And you might look behind and say, well, yep, that's exactly right. We're using pigs here to get rid of a noxious weed, onion weed. It's very, very persistent. It has a little bulb at the bottom of it. If you take the top off, it can just keep regrowing. People really struggle to get rid of it. It's worthless as a stock food. It can cause toxicity in horses. It's not really much good for anything. It is good as a pig food, and it is good as a parrot food. In our efforts to restore these pastures, we've been confining our pigs in a small area, relatively small area with electric wire, and we let them heavily impact an area. They come through, they dig this stuff up, they do actually eat those little bulbs that I was talking about, but more importantly, they leave them scattered on the surface where the parrots can come. They come and crack them open, and each one of those little bulbs that a parrot cracks open is non-viable anymore. It never comes back. And then we've been able to rest these areas for quite an extended period. The grass comes back, they dig up the weed seeds that are waiting in the soil, those sprout. We also throw a little bit of seed around as well, some lupin, some clover, some different ryegrasses. We spread that around as competition for any more of the Guildford grass that wants to come back, and we've had some real success. This is where the pigs were about 3, nearly 4 weeks before we put it in that section that we were just looking at. So we're having some pretty good germination. Spring has only just started, so this place has been under winter frosts and it's been pretty cold. I'm seeing lots of clover starting up. I just threw around some lupins from the feed store, some Australian sweet lupins, so that's good for a little bit of cheap nitrogen. I didn't do it in any sort of organised fashion. I just sort of threw some seed out and dragged a pallet just to cover it over. It was very, very rough. A lot of the pig manure that was dropped, we've had some very heavy rains lately. They've washed in pretty well. The other thing that's impressive is how easy you can drive your finger into this soil now after the pigs have been here. So what tends to happen is they'll get all that carbon containing material, the old onion grass, if you like. They upturn it and it makes all these little compost heaps everywhere. So that's pretty good. And I have seen, there's worms all coming up in them. What I have seen is these little piles, because they sit quite high on the ground, when we've had heavy rain, the worms have been using these as a refuge. I don't know if you've ever seen on a lawn when the big rains come, you have worms dying everywhere. Well, the worms have been, there's one there. The worms have been coming up into this and getting out of that, so that's really great. So we didn't really see much worm activity here before, but their numbers seem to have boosted ever since we've had the pigs come through and plough this up. But I do want to go and have a look just at the paddock next to us, because even though that was really heavily smashed down in the summertime and all through winter, growth and into spring, it's going pretty crazy. So we'll have a look at that. Well, as you can see, we're getting pretty lush growth here. Now this was very very strongly impacted by the pigs when they were last in here. It's still another 3 weeks, another 3 block rotations before they get back here, but when they get back in there's going to be plenty for them to eat. So again, this was all just onion grass, and most recently in summer they'd pretty much tromped this down to not quite dust, but they'd really impacted it heavily. As we walk down through this field, we can see the grass is getting a lot more lush. This particular area here is just from spilled pig food. We did have a big bonfire here at one stage, and this was all just burnt and nothing would grow here. So I was feeding the pigs consistently in this area and throwing a lot of grain around, and you can see now that it's really growing back great. And in fact, a lot of that charcoal and stuff like that should hold all the nutrients of the pig excrement that was released here when they were all piglets and everything was going crazy. So this was absolutely smashed bare in the summertime. We wanted a lot of impact here, and it's really coming back great. Don't forget, we've only been doing this with the pigs. We've been here a little bit longer, but the pigs have only been active here for 12 months. So after 2 years, this place should be really pumping. We can see that this is all very overgrown. There's quite a lot of litter on the ground here. These areas, the pigs really enjoy them for shelter, and in fact we use these areas to raise our last litter of piglets. We were able to just put the pigs in here and they were able to make nests and raise piglets, so this is really great. These tree belts are going to be quite valuable in summer, so our strategy is to actually enclose these as a central hub. I will show this when I show moving the pigs. Enclose this as a central hub, and we have spokes radiating out, and we let the pigs go out and sort of rotate through the pastures themselves. But these areas under the trees can have really heavy pig impact, and we don't care. Lots and lots of bark here, nothing's going to grow, but the pigs can smash that in and they incorporate it into the soil. These blue gums, they are really gross heavy feeders, so it doesn't really matter that the pigs do a lot of poo in here as well, that if we confine it, they're not going to do too much damage. By having a central hub, we can also run a water line in here, and we don't have to worry about putting water out on each grazing cell that we have on the pigs. So in the summertime, all of this will turn very brittle, and I don't want too much impact. So finally we'll be able to just confine the pigs to the tree line, and they'll have all the shelter that they need. I can bring them some food. If I want to in the summertime, I can just do a quick 1 or 2 days, in those grazing cells if I think that it's warranted. But otherwise they can sort of hang out in the shade and be quite comfortable. I might even make them a little wallow if I feel like spoiling them. Now as we go a little bit further down this pasture, we can see where the pigs were in their first rotation. So I brought them up these blocks. This, it's going absolutely crazy here. This was a ramp that we built to move quite a large boar, Jimmy, out of here. So back then you could see it was actually quite bare. It's gone absolutely mad. We've got some cape weed in here as well. That's, a lot of people, it's a pasture weed. They're not that impressed with it. The pigs really like it. They like getting in there and sort of tearing it up. But the most impressive thing now is this used to be just onion weed and some wild oats and not much else. So the very nice thing that we've got going on now is all of the diversity. There's so many species of plant in here, and hopefully what I'll do is, as the pigs go through, we can start throwing in some more flowers and stuff. I'd really like this to be a flower meadow. The whole operation of moving our pigs is a lot easier when they're occupied with food. So we'll feed them up and then we'll move them, which is pretty much the routine I like to do. Milk the goats and then feed the pigs and move the pigs, and then they can spend the rest of the day on some new forage. Just out of interest, this IBC cube here, I made it into a bulk feed storage really simply. We had just a little bit of channel here and all the bits out of an IBC, like this metal plate, the metal plate behind this bit of white plastic, which is the cutout from here. All of this I was able to turn into this bulk food storage, quite rat proof, but what it wasn't was goat proof at one stage, which I found out to my dismay. So I actually had to drill a few holes here and put a couple of R-clips. There we go. She's goat secure. I came out one day and the goats had come and they're very inquisitive. They came and they used their muzzles to push that up. It was just food everywhere. So, all part of owning goats. Alright, very good. Are you coming, dog? Of course you are. So there we go. At the moment, before I change the configuration of these grazing cells, I just wanted the pigs to be back in their tree line, their central cell. Food's the best way to do it. And to make my work a lot easier, I've de-energized the fence. So the pigs, they won't test this. Usually they're really sensitive to electricity. They really hate it. So it takes them many days actually for this to be down before they'll even try and cross it. So at the moment they're occupied, so we'll change the configuration, we'll give them a new graze and we'll have a look at where they were. To contain the pigs, all I need to do is just put a couple of wires across. These don't even need to be energized really, but if I turn that fence back on, of course, these will be, and they are as good as a gate. So the pigs have been coming in and out of here for the whole week. At the top of this cell, there's another one of these. And that's what's been keeping the pigs from getting up into the top pasture. So I really want to control where they're accessing. Now you can see here that these pigs have really dug up this area, and the reason being is in the past there was a laneway coming down through here and the pigs weren't able to access it, and so there was still quite a bit of onion grass. And now that they've got in here, they've started digging it up again, and you can see a lot of the bulbs all pretty much crashed out, and you can see it all down there as well. They have dug up a bit of pasture as well, but they've mainly focused on here. So you can see, even though this is pretty rough, it's nowhere near the same impact as where they just were, where they've just massive clods of earth and flipped it over. This is very light rooting, where they're just looking for all the small bulbs of very young plants of these onion weeds. They've just gone through and skimmed it, maybe about an inch deep. Over there, pretty much untouched. So it's definitely time to move them on. This stuff that's been disturbed like this, I'm pretty happy with that. I'll be able to just seed this, and it's such a small area, I can just drag a pallet by myself behind and that should cover it, and we'll improve this step by step. So each pass that the pigs go through, there's less of that noxious weed and more pasture. All right, so the system that I'm using to keep the pigs in, I'm using a brand of posts and also a winch from a mob called Kiwi Tech. They're over in New Zealand, those tricky Kiwis. They really make some good stuff. So all of these poles are made of fiberglass. The little guides to keep this portable electric fencing in place, they're made of plastic, and they're held in place with wedges, which means that it's really easy to adjust the height of, you know, where you want the line. My special Kiwi Tech tool. That's important with pigs, because what they do when you're first running them through to bulldoze like new ground, they will heap it up and you constantly have to clear under the lines. If it's a fixed height one like the ones I've been using before, you need to kick it out. With Kiwi Tech stuff, you can actually just very easily keep raising that wire to keep pace with the pigs. So this is nice stuff. Any electric fencing system that you end up using, being able to adjust the height of it is very handy. Another novel invention that these guys came up with is end sections. So I want to run a line here at right angles to this string. It's de-energized, so it's flexible stuff. I can't really tie onto it. So what they came up with is little end sections. So just a post like that, and they use triangulation. Where am I going to put it? About there. There we go. By having another post here, you actually end up with quite a strong thing that you can pull on. The other thing that they did, which I think is quite nice, is putting pulleys here. Look, you don't need to get the Kiwi Tech pulleys. You can actually just go and get ones from the hardware store, but I like these because they're a large diameter. And that means that with these pulleys, you can run 2 lines of fence for about 200 metres just with 1 reel. Makes life nice and quick. I can now just walk out and pull 2 lines at the same time. That's what I'm going to do. Now another nice thing about this Kiwi Tech stuff is a lot of the reels, you have to buy an individual reel each time, but with these ones the spools come off the actual gearbox. I'll lay that aside, and that's a very nice feature. Just tighten it up. And in here, there's a neat little way of attaching the spool to the fence. Well, that all looks pretty good. So that's the upper boundary, and now I just need to go and take down the old boundary and make that the lower boundary, and then the pigs can come in here and enjoy some of this good stuff. So at the opposite end of here, we've got exactly the same thing as I just set up. We've got an end section and we've got a couple of pulleys. So one thing I didn't mention before is that those pulleys also, they act to equalise the tension in the line. With 2 lines, you can have one tight and one sort of a little bit slack sometimes if the, if the posts bend over or whatever. With the pulleys, they equalise. So no big deal, but something nice. All right, so we'll let that go. And the gearing on these reels means that they it goes pretty quick. We'll just dismantle this end assembly and we'll take it because we need it at that other end. Okay, so you can see that I've set up the end assembly that we just removed from there. You might wonder why I don't just tie it straight from this wire across to that wire. Well, if I did that, it would be very, very hard for me to isolate different sections of the fence to try and find a fault in the future if it was earthing to ground and I wasn't getting any voltage. Because when you're checking electric fence, it helps to be able to just isolate certain sections and see if the problem rectifies itself. If you start joining them across paddocks, it really takes out your troubleshooting ability. So I've set up an end section here, so it's electrically isolated from this fence going up this way, and we want to keep them as separate. So that run down there and this run going down the property, they're still separate. You might be thinking, oh, well, what about that string that you've tied in there? Remember, this is off at the moment. This is just a visual thing for the pigs, and they're not trying to test it. It is temporary. I will take that away. I'll show you how I've managed that with the other gate that is being left in place. So that line that we just ran over to the other fence would be going all the way through all of this pen, and if we had that one connected to the fence, it would be the same problem that I'm discussing right now. So we'll have a look at that in a second, but I just want to finish doing this division. Well, these are some pretty contented pigs. What I want to point out is they immediately go to grazing. So when we put them in an area where there's just onion grass, bam, they start ploughing and dig it all up. But these pigs have already been, well, not these particular pigs, that one, but these ones are pretty new to it. They've been through, they've already churned all this up. all the onion grass is pretty much gone now, and they can smell that there's nothing down there of interest. So now what their main focus is, apart from running away from the dog that they've seen 100 times, their main focus now is just purely grazing on this pasture. So I think I left them in there for 7 days, and they ran out of all the stuff they wanted to eat, and they did actually start digging for that meagre last bit of onion weed in there. I think rather than 7 days, if I move them through this block in about 5 days, because it's spring at the moment, we're getting a lot of growth, if I move them through fairly quickly, I can anticipate not much digging at all. Oh my goodness. You found the water trough, huh? This is the area they constantly come back to. We change the cells out of here, but this delineation here always stays. So they've always got shelter, I can have the water and everything else like that. But it's interesting to see that round here, there's no digging either. All of this looked like that 7 days ago, but all of this has been mowed right down to within about 1 inch of ground level. That's about as close as the pigs can get. They can't get quite as close as sheep. So they've actually shorn it, but you can also see in here, not too much digging. As long as we've been keeping our pigs on pasture and rotating them like this, it's remarkable just how shiny they are and how clean they keep themselves. They were pretty muddy when we had them down in the bottom block and it was raining all the time and they were doing some hard work. But when they get a chance to do this, they actually manage to keep themselves pretty clean. You wouldn't think so. It really does keep them in good condition. All right, here's the other gate, and like I said, it's electrically isolated from the pen. It's only attached to that fence. And I do it just by having one of these tread-in posts with it threaded from the fence around and back to it. It also means that it can be used as a gate. So pretty simple, nothing too mind-bending. We can have it in here like that, and then the pigs won't be able to access there. There we go. That's all it needs. Actually, we'll just tension that up a bit like that. And that's enough to keep the pigs in. Of course, that gap is too small for them to get out, and they don't want to touch this because it's electrified. So it's all it needs to be. Pretty simple. So the pigs have access to all of that. They can go out that chute and they can get down to that pasture, but all of this still sort of awaits them. If you're wondering why you need to go to all that trouble of just sort of managing where the pigs go, what will happen is if we just put them in this one paddock, like a lot of grazing schemes, we'll just put them in this paddock and we'll forget about them for 1 month because they're in here for 1 month. What they'll do is they'll go around and they'll just pick all the stuff they really like, you know, and they'll just wander willy-nilly, and you know, they'll leave all the sort of undesirable stuff. If we confine them a little bit harder, they tend to just graze on everything and then they move on. So that's how pastures can degrade. If you just keep letting animals in, they'll continually just select for the nicer stuff and they'll leave the poorer stuff. All of that pressure on the nice stuff means it doesn't bounce back as well, and everything else is just, it doesn't have any pressure. So its competition is being taken out by the animals, so those other plants grow better. Sooner or later you're getting weeds, you're getting unpalatable plants, and your pastures degrade. So by confining them and managing them well and then moving them on, everything sort of gets a little bit of a hit, but everything gets more intense manure, better impact, and it comes back. Anyway, that's the theory, and just in 1 year I'm pretty convinced that theory is sound, because we're really getting really good growth where there was absolute rubbish here before.